You need to get over here right now. Turn around! 511, she's refusing to comply. Get out of the vehicle! I own actively resisting. Get out of the fucking... Get out of the vehicle!
In the early 1940s, inside the quiet neighborhood of Lafitte in Jefferson Parish, where less than 1,000 people lived, was born a girl who as an adult took marriage as a means of income, killing her husbands. Jill Lonita Coit. She was born Jill Lonita Billiot in Lafitte, Louisiana. Raised in New Orleans, she was popular but struggled academically, dropping out of high school in 1961 to marry her first husband, Larry Eugene Eam, in Indiana. Less than a year later, they divorced and she emptied their joint bank account. Over the years, Jill went on to marry again. She married Stephen Moore in 1964, then William Clark Coit Jr. in January 1966, while still legally wed to Stephen Moore, and several others after that. She eventually married a total of 11 times to 9 different men, often overlapping marital status and circumstances. Her third husband, William Clark Coit Jr., was shot dead in Houston on the 29th of March 1972, soon after filing for divorce from Jill. Although she became a suspect, insufficient evidence prevented charges, and she checked into a mental hospital, evading further immediate investigation. Fast forward to Colorado. In 1991, she married Gerald Jerry Boggs, a hardware store owner in Steamboat Springs. Unknown to him, she was still married to someone else, a fact his brother uncovered. The marriage ended in annulment after revelations of Jill's fraud, bigamy, aliases, faked pregnancy, insurance scams, and mortgage deception. Then came conflict over a bed and breakfast they co-owned, with a lawsuit pending. Only days before their civil trial, Newman Boggs was found beaten and shot to death at home. She was convicted on the 17th of March 1995 of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. The court handed down its sentence on the 24th of May 1995, sentencing her to life imprisonment without possibility of parole, plus an additional 47 years and a $1 million fine. She remains incarcerated at the Denver Women's Correctional Facility. Ashley Benefield. On the 27th of September 2020, in Lakewood Ranch, Florida, a heated confrontation at her mother's home ended when Ashley Benefield shot her estranged husband, Douglas "Doug" Benefield, twice in the torso. Doug, a 58-year-old Navy veteran and technology entrepreneur, died shortly after at a nearby hospital. Ashley, then 28, claimed she acted in self-defense, saying Doug had struck her and lunged toward her, while prosecutors argued the shooting was a deliberate act, the end result of months of escalating tension between the two. Ashley's path to that day began years earlier in Maryland, where she was born Ashley Byers and trained as a promising ballerina, before injuries shifted her career toward teaching and costume design. In August 2016, while volunteering on a political campaign in Florida, she met Doug, and they married just 13 days later. Together, they launched the American National Ballet in Charleston, South Carolina, but the company folded within months amid financial and managerial turmoil. By 2018, Ashley was pregnant, and the marriage had become volatile. She accused Doug of abuse and even poisoning, though investigators found no supporting evidence, while Doug sought divorce and fought for custody of their daughter. In the weeks before the shooting, Ashley returned to her mother's home in Florida and filed a restraining order against Doug. 2 months after his death, she was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. Her trial began in Manatee County on the 22nd of July, 2024. After 6 days of testimony and about 7 hours of jury deliberation, the verdict came on the 30th of July, and she was found guilty of manslaughter with a firearm, not guilty of second-degree murder. On the 3rd of December 2024, Judge Matthew White sentenced her to 20 years in a Florida state prison, followed by 10 years of probation. Angelina Rodriguez. In September 2000, in Montebello, California, Angelina Rodriguez was living what seemed to be a new chapter. She had married 41-year-old Jose Francisco Frank Rodriguez only months earlier after meeting him while working at Angel Gate Academy. But beneath the surface, investigators later said she was driven by greed. In April 2000, she entered her fourth marriage when she wed Frank Rodriguez, a special education teacher. Her previous unions had all ended in divorce. She was first married to Hector Gonzalez in 1987, lasting under a year, then to Tom Fuller in 1990, about 3 years, and later briefly to Don Combs. Each of these marriages ended before Angelina turned 32, and each was notably short-lived. Against this backdrop of repeated short marriages, her marriage to Frank seemed no different in longevity, but it would instead become notoriously fatal. Just months after the wedding, she pushed for a $250,000 life insurance policy, naming herself as beneficiary. Soon after, Frank fell gravely ill. Evidence showed that Angelina slipped crushed oleander leaves into his tea, then days later mixed antifreeze into his Gatorade. On the 9th of September 2000, Frank was found dead. Surprisingly, his death wasn't the first suspicious tragedy linked to her. In 1993, her 13-month-old daughter Alicia died from suffocation after a pacifier nipple choked her throat. Angelina filed a lawsuit against the manufacturer and received a financial settlement. Although she was never charged in that case, prosecutors would later use it to argue a pattern of financially motivated behavior. On the 7th of February 2001, authorities arrested her in Paso Robles, California. Her trial began in 2003 in Los Angeles County. The jury found her guilty of first-degree murder with special circumstances of poisoning and financial gain, along with attempting to dissuade a witness. In January 2004, the court sentenced her to death by lethal injection and sent her to Central California Women's Facility, the state's death row for women. In her sentencing, Los Angeles County Superior Court Judge William Pounders stated that she killed her husband in an exceptionally cruel and callous way, and that her guilt had been proved to be an absolute certainty. 2 decades later, in November 2024, her death sentence was overturned due to ineffective legal counsel at sentencing. She was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. April Rose Wilkins. Born on the 25th of April 1970, she shot and killed her ex-fiancé, 37-year-old Terry Carlton, on the 28th of April 1998, inside his home in Tulsa, Oklahoma. For years before that night, Wilkins endured a documented pattern of escalating abuse. Beatings that left her bruised, sexual assaults, stalking, kidnapping at gunpoint, and repeated death threats against her and her son. Police reports date back to the mid-1990s, including incidents in Rome, Georgia, and in Greece, where she sought protective orders in 1996. Carlton himself had a history of run-ins with the law, including a February 1998 arrest for transporting a loaded firearm, a charge he failed to appear in court for. On the night of the killing, Wilkins later testified that she was lured to his home, assaulted for hours, and held captive in his basement before managing to wrestle away his gun and fire 8 shots. She stayed at the scene, placed a blanket over his body, and told arriving officers what she had done. She was arrested that night and charged with first-degree murder. In April 2025, her legal team secured a habeas corpus hearing, arguing that her continued imprisonment violated her constitutional rights and that her resentencing had been unreasonably delayed. But in June 2025, a Tulsa County judge denied her release before the resentencing process, keeping her incarcerated as her case moves forward under the new law. She was tried in April 1999, with the defense arguing self-defense under the framework of battered woman syndrome. But despite existing evidence, including Carlton's own recorded admissions of violence and prior police reports, much of it never reached the jury. They found her guilty, and in July 1999, the court sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole, sending her to the Mabel Bassett Correctional Center. Right there, she became a fixture in the prison community, training service dogs, working on wellness programs, and writing about the experiences of abuse survivors in the criminal justice system. In 2024, Oklahoma passed the Survivors Act, a law allowing domestic violence survivors convicted of crimes tied to their abuse to seek resentencing, and Wilkins became the first to apply. I post interesting real crime and prison documentary videos every day on this channel. It will help a lot if you show support by subscribing. Thank you very much as you do so. Next on the list, Kelly Baker. On the 16th of August 2017, in their Greeley, Colorado home, Kelly Baker discovered her husband, Randy Baker, unresponsive on the floor. Initially presumed to have succumbed to natural causes, given his heart condition, an autopsy revealed 2 bullet wounds, changing everything. Randy, a 59-year-old former power lineman turned substance abuse counselor, had rebuilt his life and even helped his nephew, Kelly Raisley, overcome addiction. In those early hours, investigators noted disturbing irregularities. Randy's wallet, keys, and car were missing. His car was later found abandoned, wiped clean of prints. Suspicion turned inward, towards family. Investigators soon uncovered a secretive and extensive text message exchange, around 4,500 messages between Kelly and Carol Baker, Randy's sister, in the months before his death. The web unraveled further. Carol had listed Randy's car for sale on Facebook. Kelly stood to gain over $130,000 in life insurance and equity in the home. A mysterious contact saved by Kelly, Sonia, turned out to be Kelly Raisley, Carol's son. Then the scheme became clear. Kelly and Carol had plotted Randy's murder and enticed Raisley with $10,000 and a motorcycle to carry it out. In May 2019, nearly 2 years after the murder, Kelly Baker, at 49 years old, was tried. A jury convicted her of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Judge Shannon Lyons sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 48 years for the conspiracy charge. Randy had been killed on the 16th of August 2017. The trial and sentencing followed in May 2019. Kelly is serving her sentence at the Denver Women's Correctional Facility. Carol Baker, convicted of second-degree murder, received 30 years at La Vista Correctional Facility, parole eligible around 2030. Raisley, guilty of first-degree murder, serves life without parole at Sterling Correctional Facility. Kristen Rossum. Kristen Rossum's story began in San Diego, California, where she worked as a toxicologist for the San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office. Born in 1976 and raised in Claremont, California, she had been a promising student, but her early life was marked by personal struggles, including a battle with methamphetamine addiction in the 1990s. She eventually claimed to have overcome her drug use, earning a degree in biochemistry from San Diego State University before joining the medical examiner's office in 2000. In November of that same year, police responded to the La Jolla apartment she shared with her husband, 26-year-old Gregory T. DeVillers. He was found unresponsive, surrounded by scattered rose petals. Rossum told authorities he had been depressed and may have taken his own life. Toxicology tests revealed a lethal level of fentanyl, a powerful synthetic opioid. Investigators discovered that Rossum had been having an affair with her married supervisor, Dr. Michael Robertson, and that she had both the access and the expertise to obtain and administer fentanyl. Authorities allege that she staged the Rose Penta scene to mirror a romantic motif from the film American Beauty, masking the crime as a suicide. She was arrested in June 2001 and charged with first-degree murder, accused of killing her husband to prevent him from exposing her affair and potential drug use to her employer. Her trial began in October 2002 at the San Diego County Superior Court. The prosecution presented forensic evidence linking her to the fentanyl and painted a picture of a premeditated murder, while the defense suggested suicide was plausible. On the 12th of November 2002, the jury found her guilty of first-degree murder. On the 12th of December 2002, the court sentenced Kristen Rossum to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She was sent to the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, where she remains incarcerated. Barbara Stager. On the 1st of February 1988, in Durham, North Carolina, 40-year-old Barbara Stager called 911 to report that her husband, 40-year-old Russell Stager, had been shot in their bed. She told police it was an accident. That Russell, a high school teacher and football coach, had been showing her how to use his .25 caliber pistol when it discharged as he slept. But the story raised immediate suspicion. The medical examiner determined that the gun had been pressed against Russell's head when it fired, and investigators learned troubling details about Barbara's past. In 1978, her first husband, Larry Ford, had also died from a gunshot wound in bed under similarly questionable circumstances. At that time, his death had been ruled accidental, and Barbara collected on his life insurance. Now, a decade later, authorities began re-examining both cases, uncovering a pattern of financial troubles and large life insurance policies taken out on her spouses. On the 3rd of March 1988, after a deeper forensic review and witness statements contradicting her account, Barbara was arrested and charged with first-degree murder in Russell's death. Her trial began in April 1989 in Durham County Superior Court. Prosecutors presented evidence of motive through her mounting debts and the $50,000 life insurance payout, as well as striking similarities to her first husband's death. The defense argued it was an accident and emphasized the absence of eyewitnesses. After deliberating for less than 3 hours, on the 14th of April 1989, the jury returned a verdict of guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced Barbara Stager to death, but in 1993 her sentence was reduced on appeal to life imprisonment without parole. She was transferred to the North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women, where she remains incarcerated. The case remains as one of North Carolina's most notorious spousal murder prosecutions. Pamela Ann Smart. Pamela Smart's story began in the small town of Derry, New Hampshire in 1990. At 22 years old, she was the media services coordinator at Winniconet High School in Hampton and married to 24-year-old Greg Smart. Their marriage, less than a year old, was already strained. Pamela began an affair with a 15-year-old student, William "Billy" Flynn, whom she met through her work. Prosecutors later alleged that Pamela manipulated Flynn into believing their relationship could only continue if her husband was eliminated. On the 1st of May 1990, Greg Smart was found shot to death in the couple's condominium. Evidence pointed quickly to Flynn and 3 of his friends, Patrick Randall, Vance Latimer Jr., and Raymond Fowler, who confessed to their roles in the murder. Flynn testified that he shot Greg while Randall held him down, all orchestrated under Pamela's direction. She was arrested on the 1st of August 1990 after an investigation that included secretly recorded conversations in which she appeared to implicate herself. Her trial began in March 1991 at the Rockingham County Superior Court. On the 22nd of March 1991, the jury found her guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and witness tampering. On the 9th of April, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, becoming one of the first women in the United States to be convicted in a murder case heavily reliant on media coverage and secretly taped evidence. Pamela Smart remains incarcerated at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women in New York. Emma Smith Rain. Emma Rain's story began in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, where a web of secrets unraveled to expose a calculated plot. Prosecutors would later reveal that Rain had been married 3 times, and all 3 husbands had died under suspicious circumstances. The most damning case involved her second husband, Ernest Smith, a well-known minister. On the 8th of February 2006, Ernest was found shot to death in the couple's home. Investigators quickly focused on Rain after uncovering troubling inconsistencies in her account and learning that she stood to gain significant financial benefits from his death. Her history raised further alarms. Her first husband, James Rain, had died in a shooting in 1973 under circumstances that never led to charges, and her third husband, Louis Guarino, also died under suspicious conditions in 2006, just months after Ernest's murder. By 2012, advances in forensic analysis and the persistence of law enforcement brought the case back into focus. Detectives pieced together witness testimony, bank records, and physical evidence pointing directly to Rain's role in Ernest's killing. She was arrested in 2014 and charged with second-degree murder. Her trial took place in Gretna, Louisiana, beginning in August 2016. Prosecutors presented a timeline of events, financial motives, and her pattern of losing husbands under questionable circumstances. On the 12th of August, the jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict for second-degree murder. Emma Smith Rain was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and is currently serving her sentence at the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women. Tia Young. On a November night in Beaufort, Gwinnett County, Georgia, George Young returned home to the porch of his family residence. It was on the 16th of November 2017. George, a security business owner and husband of 22 years, had just pulled into the driveway when he was shot twice as he opened the front door, lying face up, feet toward the door. His wife, Tia Young, who had lost her job recently, awoke to the shots. Their friend and tenant Harvey Timothy Lee lived in the home and worked for George. Tia called 911 at 11:31 p.m. and officers arrived around 11:40 p.m. At the time of the shooting, neither firearm nor footage helped investigators. Security cameras had been broken for months and the .40 caliber weapon was never recovered. Harvey claimed he heard the shots, retrieved his gun, attempted CPR, and told Tia to call 911 immediately. Tia described financial strain and even mentioned George being followed. Neighbors testified to hearing the shots and seeing someone tampering with a vehicle shortly afterward. The days following revealed deeper complexities. Tia, as beneficiary, sought help locating George's $1 million life insurance policy. Harvey removed a tracking device he had placed on George's car under suspicious circumstances. A friend was asked by Tia to retrieve cell phones from both Tia's and Harvey's bedrooms, perhaps to hide incriminating content. Texts and emails later unearthed indicated a secret affair between Tia and Harvey. Initially denied, later confirmed when confronted with the evidence. Additionally, text searches about venom, memes about being convicted for a murdered husband, and other odd browsing behavior surfaced. They were indicted and on the 6th of April 2019, the jury rendered its verdict. Tia was found guilty of felony murder, aggravated assault, and both counts of attempted tampering with evidence. She was acquitted of malice murder. On the 15th of April, Tia was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, plus additional years, totaling 3 years for the tampering charges, to be served consecutively. She will be eligible for parole around 2049. Harvey Lee was convicted of malice murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault, and received life in prison without the possibility of parole. If you enjoyed this and want to see more interesting videos, I'm going to be posting real crime events and prison updates every day on this channel. I would really appreciate if you like and subscribe. Thank you very much.